Yeah, cricket time now on the SportsMax Zone. West Indies are in command of the second and final test against host Zimbabwe at the Queen Sports Club in Bulawayo. The Caribbean men have a 175-run first innings lead heading into Tuesday's third day. At Stumps on a rain-curtailed day 2, the Windies were 290 for 8, led so far by 70 from Ruston Chase and 53 from Raymon Reifer. Pacer Victor Enyauchi and leg spinner Brandon Mavuta have so far taken 3 wickets each. Early in the match, left-arm spinner Gudakesh Motie took 7 for 37 as the Windies dismissed Zimbabwe for a paltry 115 in their first time at bat. Let's hear from Ruston Chase, who spoke following day 2 action.
Obviously, I was looking for that century. As I said in the other interview, I thought my mindset was still really in the old ball mindset. Obviously, the new ball may do a bit more, so I thought that was a bit disappointing on my end, but it was still a good delivery from the bowler, so credit must go to him. But as I said, I was a bit disappointed not being able to convert, but I was still happy in the end to get a decent score. Well, I'm happy with the position we're in. Obviously, it could be better, but obviously we're still leading the game. I think if we could carry the score up to 350, that would give us a significant lead, and I think that would be enough for us to bowl out Zimbabwe in the second innings.
Yeah, Ruston Chase on interview duties following his 70 for the West Indies. Fazeer Mohammed on analyst duties for today. Faz, how are you doing on this Monday?
Not too bad at all. Still recovering from the social media attack that I endured from you all last week. But we have some unfinished business there. IG, by the way, notwithstanding the barbs from Lance Whitaker, in an electrical context, IG is isolated ground. So isolated grounding in that regard. So I just had to get that back.
It's really too early in this discussion to have me tearing up again. So let me just ask you for an assessment of the second test between West Indies and Zimbabwe after 2 days of action.
Well, with all the rain that's around, I think the West Indies should declare overnight. Because clearly at this point, they have a lead of 175 runs. We've seen how poor the Zimbabweans are with the bat. The bowlers should be quite fresh. And again, from what we understand, there's going to be even more rain around over the next 3 days. And I know there's been some criticism about the West Indies batting too slowly. Well, there's always the danger, especially when you're talking about players who are still trying to find their way in international cricket. If you go for it helter-skelter, you can be dismissed quite cheaply. So really the West Indies didn't have too much of a choice in my estimation, given their own limitations. But now that they have that very healthy lead, and with so much rain around, as we're told, they should probably declare overnight.
Yes, definitely agree with you, Faz. But, you know, I just want to zone in, if I'm to say so, on the batting effort that we saw from the middle order and the lower order. And I'm saying that because, you know, many a times when we discuss West Indies cricket, for too long we've been speaking about the batting problems. But what I saw, of course, Stagenor and Chanapol got his 36. Craig Brathwaite didn't put up so much with the bat. But the rest of the team, the middle order, and of course Ruston Chase at the lower end of the batting spectrum, he stood up and he said, we'll make the runs.
Yeah, and again, Mariah, I'm not wanting to pour cold water on it, but this will sound like cold water anyway. You always have to put it in context. This is Zimbabwe, a team that is struggling, a team with so many players who have very little, if any, test match experience at all. So yes, the West Indies did well, given the quality of the opponents that they were facing. They did well enough in this situation again, and we must put that caveat, because in a few days' time it's going to be on to South Africa, and then you're going to really get a sense as to whether or not these players have progressed in any way, whether they've regressed, whether it's been static, and then we'll know. But in the conditions in which they are taking on these opponents right now, they did fairly okay. It wasn't an exceptional batting performance. It was a dogged effort, a determined effort against ordinary opponents on a slow, low pitch. Typical Caribbean conditions. So at the end of the day, yes, the West Indies are a lot better than Zimbabwe, and the middle order, almost everyone got a start, as you mentioned. Craig Brathwaite had a rare failure, given the excellent 12 months that he's had. So yes, they did a good job, but I wouldn't go to the extent of saying it was outstanding or fantastic or tremendous by any stretch of the imagination, simply because they are taking on opponents who are barely familiar with Test cricket anyway.
Yeah, you know, Faz, usually with a question like this, I would say to you, are should we be disappointed? But I'm going to put this one specifically to you and ask if you are disappointed that most of the batsmen got starts, but none of them really pushed on to get a big total. And as you pointed out, given that it looks like a pretty mediocre Zimbabwe team, you would have hoped that at least one batsman would have gone on to get a big one.
Yes, very disappointed, to answer your specific question immediately, because this is what these opportunities are about. We talked about it leading into this brief test series. We saw it in the first test match with that record-opening partnership between Chanderpaul and the captain, Craig Brathwaite. And in the circumstances, they had to go helter-skelter at that stage, looking for quick runs with the time lost over the first couple of days. So you could understand that. This time around, you had players who got a start and then got out. Yes, there was the run out in which Reifer was a victim, but again, we'll have to wait and see how he copes when they head down south to South Africa to take on a far better bowling attack, arguably one of the best in the world. And that's why it's so important that you take advantage of these opportunities. Yes, it's mediocre. Motie is a very good wrist spinner, as we've seen. He's picked up wickets again. Motie clearly has some pace, caused some discomfort for the lower order with the second new ball. Even Roston Chase admitted that his mindset was more with the old ball than the new ball, which is a bit surprising. You'd think that you'd be able to make that adjustment. But having said that, he got 70. But I'm sure, as he said, he's reflecting on the disappointment of not getting three figures. Because yes, for everyone getting a start against Zimbabwe, you have to be thinking three figures as an absolute minimum.
Yeah, definitely. Faz, of course, Raymon Reifer, he has been a topic of discussion and you just mentioned him. But the question is, he's gotten back-to-back 50s. Do you think, in your estimation, he has, put his hand up and say, maybe he's the man for that number 3 position?
He's put his hand up, but I still have serious questions about his suitability for that position. I'm not questioning his effort. I'm not questioning his commitment. I'm not questioning the fact that he really gives everything. We've seen that over and over at the regional level, playing for Guyana, playing for other franchises, in any opportunity that is given. He always gives up his best, whether with the bat or, as we've seen very little of, with the ball. But having said all of that, it's a different situation when you're taking on ordinary Zimbabwean bowlers, slow, low pitch, friendly conditions, as against taking on high quality bowling in conditions that would offer some assistance to those bowlers. And I think so far from what we've seen, Raymon Reifer, doesn't exactly look the complete article as yet by a long, long way. This could be a good start for him. This could be a few useful steps towards getting to that level, but I still don't see what I would consider to be a trademark number 3. Not someone playing shots all around, but someone who is either able to dominate, who's able to really master the conditions, who you can almost rely on to set the tempo, set the pace. I think there's some way away from that, but you can't argue with someone getting a couple of 50s. But if I were to respond to that, I would say you should have turned those 50s into hundreds and really spend a lot more time in the middle. But runs are runs.
Yeah, Faz, you've long had a beef with the treatment of spin bowlers in West Indies cricket. Gudakesh Motie's 7-wicket haul, very, very satisfying. And I want to give you a platform to talk because I know you will. Motie was the most economical bowler for the West Indies in the Under-19 World Cup in 2014. Since then, in the ensuing years, he even had difficulty getting into the Guyana setup. Of course, they did have Veerasamy Permal and Devendra Bishu and even Stephen Jacobs, who at that time was pretty prominent. And to be fair, the Guyana team were winning the first-class championship during those years. So he didn't have an automatic platform to develop his craft. But his effort here in Zimbabwe must be very satisfying to you, Faz.
Not really, because I know what is going to happen next. And you've given me the platform, so let me not disappoint you. Because this is what happens. Rakeem Cornwall got 7 wickets, and people will say, okay, 7 wickets against Afghanistan. So what? The fact of the matter is, if he didn't get 7 wickets, but if a fast bowler got 7 wickets, he'll be given many more opportunities. And this is the narrow-mindedness of our cricket. We had Roston Chase picking up 8 wickets against England. And again, the attitude was, well, England were a beaten team, they were demoralized, so he got 8 wickets. But if a fast bowler had done it, we'd all be talking about, is this the next great fast bowler, and so on. You mentioned Devendra Pishu, 8 wickets in an innings against Pakistan in Dubai in 2016. But again, you knew that was only a matter of time before he was dropped. And indeed, the players themselves reflect that attitude because you don't see them brimming with confidence. And this is the problem. And again, I can hear the arguments being put forward. Can you risk a spinner in these conditions or that conditions and so on? Well, look around. Watch at world cricket and see those spinners who are the fulcrum of their respective attacks, that they play whatever the conditions. Keshav Maharaj in South Africa. And of course, no need to mention Nathan Lyon of Australia. But Graham Swan when he played for England. Shane Warne, the late great Shane Warne, of course. But I'm just mentioning some names, and it might be said to be unfair to mention outstanding performers, but they weren't outstanding performers in their first match. Shane Warne was beaten left, right and centre by Sachin Tendulkar and company, Ravi Shastri and so on in 1991. He was on the verge of being dropped, but won a test match for Australia in Sri Lanka, and then they decided that it's a real investment in him. Are we really prepared, whether it's Gudakesh Motie, whether it's Rakeem Cornwall, whether it's Jomel Warrican, whether it's anybody else? Are our selectors, is the Caribbean public really prepared to give a frontline spinner a fighting, consistent chance in a West Indies team as they would automatically give to faster bowlers?
Yeah, I hear you, Faz, and definitely understand the standpoint of what the selectors are likely to do, have done in the past. But I want to get from you, though, how much you rate Gudakesh Motie from what you've seen of him, not just in this Zimbabwe series, but overall. I tried to bring you down this road last week, but you didn't follow me, and I know you don't like the backpedaling, but I'm doing it anyway. How much do you, Fazeer Mohammed, rate this left-arm spinner?
I think he has a lot of potential. It's too early to say, well, he is the genuine article and he is going to be the one to pick up 200, 300 test wickets, because he has a lot more work to do. I remember Michael Holing, the legendary fast bowler and commentator, talking about the difficulty of developing spinners. And he's right, because it is an art, it's a craft that requires a lot of work, because you could have a big swing at a spinner, you could go after spinners, there isn't that physical threat. And therefore, for the spinner, it's about having that confidence and that understanding that there will be the days when you'll be hoisted beyond the boundary. There will be the days when you'll be carted to all parts, but still you have that faith in your ability. And if you don't get that from your selectors, if you don't get that from your team and your teammates, if you don't get that from your captain and you're only brought on just before the end of a session, then you're not going to have that confidence in yourself. It takes a rare character to build that confidence. So to answer your specific question, I would say it's way too early to judge Gudakesh Motie. He has the basic attributes, but it takes a lot more than those basic attributes to develop. And he's not going to develop if he's going to be treated like so many other spinners have been treated when they get to the highest echelon of international cricket. Yeah,
couldn't agree with you more. And I don't want to be that captain who takes the spinner out of the attack too early. But I have to ask you about Shannon Gabriel. None for 18. On his return to the team, how do you feel he went coming in for Kemar Roach?
Shannon has had his issues with fitness, and that has been a talking point for at least 2 years as to his ability to really remain fit, bottom line, because it is a liability when you go on tour and someone is likely to break down or who can only give you 4 overs. That doesn't make sense. It really is not practical. Even if you're going to get 4 overs of lightning pace, which doesn't always happen, but still, even if it might rattle the opposition, but they know this guy is only going to last a couple of overs or 4 overs, and then we're not going to see him again until maybe sometime in mid-afternoon when he'll give you another 3 or 4 overs. That doesn't cut it at test match level. It's good enough for T20s and 50 overs and so on. But yes, Shannon Gabriel unless he can find it in him at this stage of his career, because he's at the wrong end of 30 to be a fast bowler of substance at this stage, he's not going to be able to have that sustained success that he enjoyed for a good period not so long ago. 13 wickets in that test match in St. Lucia, and had a really good spell, over 150 test wickets. But if he's only going to be isolated to just a couple overs today and a couple overs in the afternoon, that doesn't cut it at test match level.
We have 20 seconds fast. Given everything that you just said, would you take him to South Africa?
No, I wouldn't.
Wow.
I look at some other option, because really you want to give young fast bowlers an opportunity, and if they've identified young talents, give them that chance, because we really need to have someone who could give you long spells. That's important in test match cricket.
I rarely ever disagree with you, Faz, but maybe this is the one time that I will. I would definitely take Shannon Gabriel, but we don't have the time to discuss that today, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of time, especially if rain dominates the next 3 days or most of the next 3 days of this second test. Faz, thanks a lot for joining us. It was a pleasure chatting to you as usual, and I'm setting up your IG account.
Indeed, isolated ground, remember that.
But I will not allow him to do that. Yeah. Don't worry.
Shannon Gabriel will have some second innings wickets. He will.
We hope so.
He will. Trust me.
Break time, team.
Women's cricket after the break. Stay with us.
Stay with SportsMax on YouTube and follow us on all social pages for updates, news and entertainment.